So thank you so much and welcome, Ana Marie.
Thank you very much, Bernardo. It's such a pleasure to be here. And I'm a big fan of IPADE, so I'm thrilled to be reaching your whole community through this opportunity.
The first question that when we were thinking about this interview, it's kind of an obvious question, but sometimes when people think about philanthropy, business leaders, sometimes they tend to think about it just being like goodwill and giving away money. So maybe a first question would be, can you share with us, how would you define philanthropy?
Part of it is goodwill, but it's a lot more than giving money, because I mean, philanthropy, the etymology of the word is love of humanity. So it's how you share, how you give. At HIP, we call it the collective corazón. That's the movement, the community that we're creating. It's a corazón, so it's about heart. It's about loving your family and your community broadly, but it's also about working collectively and the responsibility that you have to each other, so that we have a thriving, just world where it's not just a few that are doing well, but everybody is thriving. So for us, that has a lot of faces. It can be about giving money. That's the face that I think is most obvious and is often studied and measured. And when you study and measure something, you're giving it importance. What I would love to see, and maybe through schools like IPADE, is to study and measure other things. Volunteerism, remittances, giving to your own family. So it's your time. It's not just giving money, it's giving your opportunities, you're connecting people. There's just so many ways to give. But philanthropy, I think as a space, as a field, has not been studied enough. Even in the US, it's a fairly new sector in universities. And very few people that I know that are in this field have studied philanthropy. They fell into philanthropy by chance. And then they're like, oh, this is a space and I can make a difference. I think that there's a lot to learn from the theory, and I'm glad that that's starting. And I hope it is more, because we can avoid a lot of mistakes that have been done in philanthropy in the past.
So that's very interesting. Talking about philanthropy much more as a space and not just this having good intentions and putting cash makes me think also about all the challenges that business leaders do not really see in the field of philanthropy. So the next question would be, what do you consider to be the main challenges and opportunities that you are currently facing in the philanthropy sector? What would you think about that?
Some things are different in the US and Latin America. Some things are the same. So this is all very difficult. In the US, there's also issues around taxation and how foundations are or are not taxed, and that includes corporate foundations and also individuals. And a lot of the money is going, that we see in philanthropy more and more, is going not from foundations, but from individuals, but they're going from something that's called donor advised funds, which are these, like, think of it as a secret locked boxes that you can put all of your money in. You can put $1 million, $100 million, and then you can just park it there. You get a big tax deduction for putting it there, but you don't have to actually ever give it out. So it can be, it's money that can be just locked up for a very long time. And so there's legislation that we're pushing for, well, not at HIP, but that some people are pushing for, to make it more transparent, that giving transparent, and to make the money, if you're getting a tax deduction, you should then also be putting that money out into the community, because a tax deduction means that it really belongs, these dollars that belong to the community. So there's so many things that are going on. In Latin America, there's a lot of philanthropy that is happening. It's often people to people. It's informal philanthropy. I would love to see informal philanthropy both in Latin America and in US and the Caribbean studied more, because that happens, that we trust each other more than we trust institutions, right? And so giving the money to an institution or through an institution, it feels uncomfortable. Corporate foundations, I think, are really strong, and family foundations in Latin America. But the theory of change often is based on the corporate interest of the entity or of the family. And so often they don't address systems change. So for me, the best philanthropy is one that takes into consideration and is done with people with lived experience and of the community, and is one that is offering general support so that community can do much more flexible, have the money in flexible ways because they know best.
What strategies would you suggest that business leaders or corporations or foundations, civil society can use to try to breach those barriers, to draw those bridges? And in your experience in Hispanics in philanthropy, are there any success stories regarding those challenges that could serve as an example?
Lots of success stories. What comes to mind immediately is crowdfunding and giving circles. Like they're all over and they're growing. So pay attention. What are they funding? And because that's often people of the community. I mean, I think in Mexico you call them tandas or cundinas, right? What are they funding? Follow their lead because they are people of the community. One step up, even better, is include community in your board. If it's too scary to put them on the actual governing board, have an advisory board. Bring young people onto the boards. People, young folks have such different experiences and ways of looking at the world, and the world is about tech and it's just very different. So have a board that's very intergenerational. I think those are really important ways, because then folks start getting exposed to each other's ideas. They start getting connected. You're starting to break down those barriers that I think are the same. You start breaking down the trust, the lack of trust that exists. I think those are good first steps.
That's excellent advice, I think.
Can I add one more thing? Yes. Start talking to boards about systems change. And that takes patience, and that takes a different way of looking at results and measuring results and impact that you might not see the end impact. I mean, there's some things that I funded back in 2001 that now you can see the results. It takes, a decade or 2 decades to see community systems change really take root. So a longer term perspective of what is the real results, and understanding that we need to look at both short-term things that are really important, because people are hungry, people are unhoused, children have to go to school, education, they need recreation. So things that are urgent and important now, but also so have some of your funding there, but also have some of your funding towards systems change, things that will result in the future.
Yes, that's so challenging as well for the business people mentality, right? Trying to have those long-term views on their philanthropic projects, and I think it's great advice. Let me ask you, this is a question that's especially interesting for us. I wanted to ask, what can the business schools do and business education do to help in these efforts to promote the kind of actions that you support and that you are right now describing?
I love that you're asking that. As you know, we have staff there in Mexico, and we have been toying with the idea of how can we get interest in developing a curriculum in the business schools and in the public policy schools of philanthropy. And what does this mean? Developing a few classes that then you could offer, so that people, when they graduate and they end up in their jobs, they're not ¿Y qué es esto? They're expected to be corporate good citizens, and but they don't have the curriculum, they don't have that experience. So I would love to work with you on developing a curriculum. What is good corporate philanthropy? What is the theory behind that? What are the things that you need to take into consideration? Corporate philanthropy, for example, is very different because you are, in the end, you do have stakeholders, and legally you have to do good by the stakeholders. So it has to it has different tenets. But I think that is something that in Latin America, I haven't seen many philanthropy curriculums that address that. Likewise, public policy, like those of you that are doing masters in public administrations, how do you do agendas that are that take into consideration community, the government, philanthropy, corporate, private sector? There are ways to develop programs and ideas that are win-win-win-win.